everybody? Welcome back to the After the Scales podcast, episode 6, with today's special guest, 410 sprint car driver Connor Morrell, driver of the number 28M Amelie Motor Oil Turbo Towels sprint car. I'm Jacob Dove from Phenom Motorsports, along with Robert Clements from Dirt Late Nation and Shaun Blight from Canadian Racing Tours. He competed last season full-time with the All-Stars and has been racing with the High Limit Sprint Car Series. Connor, thank you for coming on our podcast today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here.
We wanted to hop right in and talk about how Connor has kind of moved up his ranks and the dirt racing scene. He was racing that 360 sprint car and moved up to the 410s. So, Connor, for all our viewers watching, you kind of want to tell them how you kind of got into racing and how you've quickly made up, all the way up to the wing sprint car.
Yeah, so I started racing, when I was a young kid, about 4.5 years old, roughly. Just quarter midgets to flat carts. I raced the USAC tour for the longest time and quarter midget. And then I went into flat carts. And we couldn't decide which direction we wanted to go. We were going to go asphalt racing, and then I got into a micro sprint and I really liked it. So we kind of stayed that route, and then eventually, after a couple years in a micro, we went 360 racing with GLSS in Michigan, and then kind of just moved forward from there, just progressing into a 410 and basically 410 racing full time now.
And being in Florida myself, I've got the pleasure to watch you kind of go through the sprint car scene, racing at Hendry County and East Bay and a lot of the Florida tracks, and then seeing you go up to Ohio and all that. How has you have some pretty big sponsors on board, Amelie Motor Oil and Turbo Towels. Tell our viewers how those sponsorships and partnerships kind of came about.
Well, we were flying. I can't remember where we were flying back from, but as you know, most people don't know this, but Amley actually sponsors a arena in Tampa. You probably know the Amley
I
Oil
know.
Arena, where the yep,
As a
the
Canadian, I
Tampa
know.
Bay. Oh yeah, yeah, Tampa Bay Lightning, go Lightning! But they sponsor that arena, and they had billboards at the time in the Tampa International Airport, and we just saw it and took a picture with it. This is like probably 8 or 9 years ago now. Um, and they sent us a case of oil, and we've kind of been running with them ever since, and they fully support us. And yeah, and then Tubbo Towels came around when I met Terry McMillan Racing. Marsha Boyd has just been, pretty close friend of mine and pretty close friend of the whole racing team as a whole, and she's supported us ever since. So
That's awesome. I'll jump in here. So last year was your first full year kind of touring with the 410s with the All Stars. What was that kind of adjustment like? Not just on the racetrack, but just kind of living life on the road, touring kind of all over America.
yeah, honestly, with traveling with the All Stars, I learned what it was like to get my teeth kicked in about every week. That was for sure. Those guys didn't play around, but it taught me a lot in how to drive a race car and how to race with these guys too. Because they don't come here to mess around. So I had to really whip myself into shape really quick, and I started working out a lot more. Like I work out every day now. I've been focusing on getting my mind right 100%. But the living on the road aspect doesn't really bother me because, I've done it my whole life. So it's kind of like where I want to be. Like I can't stand being home. I'd rather be on the road racing. If I could race every weekend of the year, I would. But unfortunately, there's this thing called snow. So
And so this year, with kind of you say getting your teeth kicked in, you're kind of running like a true outlaw schedule this year. What are some of the goals you've set for yourself, or what have maybe the team has set for themselves?
um, well, ever since I, got hooked up with Landon Lalonde, like halfway through last year or towards the later half of last year, we really picked up a lot of steam, like a lot of steam. And I think that was the biggest problem I was facing was just getting the right people around me all the time. So, now I have Landon Lalonde as my crew chief and AJ Stewart as my car chief. Um, so that was another learning factor was getting those kinds of people around me. Um, but some of the expectations we have this year is just pound out as many good nights as we possibly can and get a few wins here and there, and then just keep building steam towards next year.
And you're obviously with Marc Dailey Racing now. How did that deal come about when you had the 2MD car? I know you um, were looking to move up to that, bigger schedule, and I think that Marc Dailey kind of came along and gave you that big shot that you were looking for.
Yeah, so how that whole deal came, like it was so weird. It just happened like all of a sudden. It wasn't like I wasn't like going at. I honestly I didn't even know him at the time either. But basically how the story went was I had one of my guys didn't want to go racing that weekend, so this was back in 22. And so I'm like, you know what, I'm not gonna sit around and do nothing for the weekend. So you know, at the time I knew, one of the crew chiefs that worked on one of the MDR cars, so I asked him if they needed any help. So I went over to Wayne County and Waynesfield and decided to help him. And basically that's kind of how I met Marc, really, just helping him out, I guess. There was a pretty funny instance leaving Waynesfield going back where me and Marc were driving the rig back to the shop, and we got turned around on some random road and had to back into some poor lady's yard. So that wasn't too fun, but yeah, she wasn't too happy. But yeah, that's kind of how I met them, honestly. So it was just kind of lucky coincidence, really.
That's amazing. So what you're saying is if you want a ride in a good sprint car, just drive into a bunch of random people's yards and one of them
Basically,
might.
basically you just got to back into random people's yards and run up the front yard, and there you go. You got yourself a ride.
No, there's things you can't learn in a classroom, kids. You write that
No.
down.
Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of getting back to last year a little bit, like going to a lot of tracks for the first time, I assume. What were some of kind of the eye openers? Like I imagine like Port Royal, riding the fence there, Eldora, that kind of thing. Like, did you have some kind of like, like holy shit type moments?
Um, I don't really like because I've raced at Eldora, and Eldora's always like, always been fast, but I guess probably the most eye-opening place I've ever been to was probably Knoxville of all places. That place is, I don't honestly, that place is so weird. That is one of the weirdest places I've ever been. I got more acclimated to Port Royal than I did to
Okay.
Knoxville right away. Williams Grove was an eye opener on how fast it was, but you basically just go in there and crank it in there and hold her wide open. I mean, and there's like a lot of these, tracks, there really isn't much to them, but Knoxville is a whole different animal. So, because it's so flat, you almost can't even see where the slick spots are either.
Right.
And then obviously the sun's in your face when you're qualifying, so that isn't fun either. Uh, but yeah, honestly, Knoxville was probably the biggest eye opener, especially trying to run that berm. I about junked a car. So
Yeah, speaking of junking cars, unfortunately, you've had some pretty serious crashes. I think Bert wanted to comment about one of them that wasn't too fun.
Yeah. Looking back at the video, it had Alex Bowman in it. Forget where it was.
34.
Yeah. Like what was going through your head as you were flying through the air, if you could remember? Or was it just like blank, like you're like, oh God, help me, please don't die.
No, I remember the whole crash. Like I was completely fine. I didn't have any concussion. I was a little sore, but I didn't have anything. I was completely fine actually. But in that crash, that was the first crash I've ever had, and I'll remember this to the day I stopped racing. It was the first crash I've ever had where I had time to think before I landed.
Wow.
The flow racing doesn't do it justice on how high I was actually in the air. Because one of the photographers actually came up to me after the race, and the wall at 34 is like 4 foot high, and the fence is probably another 10 foot. They said I was probably 3 or 4 feet above the fence. So, but it didn't, honestly, it didn't really, the crash didn't hurt itself. It just when I stopped flipping, I looked down and I could see the ground through the motor plate. So it took me a second to gather all my bearings, and but once I gathered them, I was fine.
I wanted to come back to something you said earlier about how you got the Emily sponsorship, like taking the picture in the airport. Because you're fortunate to have some pretty significant sponsors on your car, and obviously the cost of racing, whatever the platform, keeps growing and growing. Do you have any advice for younger drivers that are looking for sponsorship? Is it simply like putting yourself out there on social media, just that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, just basically just put yourself out there on social media and just email every company you can possibly think. I still do that. I still email every company I can possibly think of. I mean, what's the worst they can say? No. I mean, or just not email you at all, you know. But, that's how I've gotten some of my other, sponsorships, some of my smaller ones where I just emailed them randomly one day when I was bored or just didn't have, was thinking about it, and they, responded and they came to me and said, let's work out a deal. But just email and put yourself out there on social media. So
Awesome.
Yeah, even with us at Phenom Motorsports, I'm pretty actively involved in trying to get our drivers exposure and stuff. And even with Bert from Dirt Late Nation, he's really good at all the social media stuff. So Bert, did you want to comment about some of how important social media is?
Yeah, I mean, it's where everybody goes to find news or even talk to drivers. So I mean, it's basically almost everybody has it. So the more you're seen on that, the more thoughts you get, and then the more companies can see you, you get more sponsorships. It's just a whole different world, and it's definitely important.
So Connor, I know that there's a lot of really good sprint car guys, legendary racing role models. What are some of the drivers that you kind of looked up to, that you try to implement your driving style, kind of?
So, obviously the most generic one is Larson, of course. I feel like he's a pretty generic answer that most people would give. But honestly, I watch a lot of David Gravel's videos. I mean, a lot of them. And I've kind of taken some things on how he drives, mainly in the way he drives the brakes on his cars. It's actually helped me quite a bit, especially at East Bay when I went 10th to 5th in my heat race. I used some of the things I watched that he did for myself, and it turned out really good. So, but I look up to Gravel a lot, to be honest. I watch almost all of his videos, and I try and study him as much as I can because every driver has their different driving styles, really. But I mean, I feel like the way we drive is somewhat similar. Obviously, he's way better than me, but I don't know. I just feel like that's watching Gravel, I can kind of see a lot of my driving style in the way he drives too. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a good guy to emulate. I wanted to ask you, you're kind of running an outlaw schedule this year. What are some of the events that people can catch you at? Like some of the major events this summer, perhaps?
So basically all, almost not all, but most Eldora races, obviously Kings Royal, Joker's Wild, whatever else is going on, the high limit, duels there. Um, Four Crown, well, that's super late. That's not even summer. Man, I'm trying to think of mostly almost all high limit races during the summer, really. So pretty much any high limit race you can go to, I'll be there.
And with the high limit stuff, obviously it's exciting what they're doing for sprint car racing, but as far as more personal level, like what is your goal? Like obviously everybody wants to win, but like what is like a long-term goal that you have for yourself?
hmm Um, Long-term goal is just, really just make myself something more than anything. I know that's like more of a career lifetime goal, but basically just make myself something. But, a big goal of this year would be just, make a lot of the races, which I feel like we've been doing. Get faster in qualifying. We really studied our qualifying out, um, and really connect with the car and the crew chief. And I feel like we're really, really doing that right now. So I'm pretty much hitting most of the goals that I want. And then obviously good finish is obviously a goal of every year. Shouldn't be just, a goal for 1 year and that's it. But yeah, I feel like we're meeting a lot of our goals this year. So
And before we get into our Victory Fuel segment, did you want to kind of give a shout out to all your sponsors and supporters and tell our viewers where they can find you at on your social media platforms?
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to thank Tubble Towels and Marsha Boyd from Tubble Towels for always being there and supporting me and supporting my career, and along with Amley Oil for being there for 8 or 9 years now. Honestly, I can't even remember. Um, Hooker Harness, All Star TI-22, Eddie from All Star as well. Motor State, the Parts House, Fresh from Florida.
All right, Bert, will you take us away to our Victory Fuel segment of the show?
All right, so make sure you use code DirtLakeNation for 10% off at drinkvictory.com. We're gonna ask Connor 10 questions. Connor, answer these the best you can. Try not to think too much about them. It's kind of the point. Just quick answers, and yeah. So first, what is one race that you want to win?
Probably the Knoxville Nationals.
All right. Second, what track has the best food?
Wow. Probably Port Royal.
What food is it that they have there?
They just have a bunch of different food trucks. I couldn't even tell you. Last time I was there, I ate too much.
All right. What race should every fan attend at least once?
Kings Royal.
Who is your overall all-time racing hero?
Jeff Gordon.
Solid answer. Uh, what race haven't you run that you wish you could once?
Haven't ran the Knoxville Nationals yet.
And, what is your dream car?
Uh, Probably a Ford F-250 Limited.
Who will win the Stanley Cup?
Definitely the Lightning.
Just beat
Absolutely the Tampa
Just beat
Bay
the Leafs.
Lightning.
All right. Best Alice in Chains song.
Oh shit. Probably It Ain't Like That.
The correct answer is Nutshell. I'm sorry.
That's too generic. That's too
No.
generic though.
But it's so good.
It is good. I agree there. My personal favorite it is
All right.
It Ain't Like That.
All right, and I think everybody wants to know, what shampoo do you use?
Oh, I knew that one was coming. I honestly, actually, I think I have it right here. Hold on.
No
Yeah,
way.
yeah, that's what it is. I don't know if you can see it. It's Herbal Essence.
I put that question on the list, and Bert's like, I'm not asking him that. And I was like, no, he'll think it's funny, and no, like, as if you just have the shampoo bottle sitting right next to your desk.
Well, I have extras.
All right, and then lastly, what is your biggest pet peeve while driving?
Um, my biggest pet peeve while driving, probably when the wreckers take a millennia to get a wrecked car off the track. That just gets me going so bad in the race car.
How about on the street?
On the what?
How about like while you're driving on the road?
Oh, honestly, I kind of just like let it all roll off my back, I guess. So I kind of just let whatever happens go. But probably people that don't turn their high beams off. That's probably my biggest pet peeve.
Yeah, those definitely are solid answers. Just quickly before we conclude, I wanted to see if with your hair obviously growing, do you think the next time that you win a feature event that you will cut it off, or you're still gonna keep growing it out?
Well, actually, I've been talking to my mom about this for quite a while. I've actually been thinking about donating it. Um, whenever I go get my haircut next, honestly, and donating it to obviously a hair charity of whatever choice I can do. But yeah, I mean, if I win, I might do it. But I don't want to just shave it off of the track and leave it all there. Then I can't really donate it. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I'd be willing to make a deal where I cut it all off at my next win.
Well, that sounds like a challenge. Well, we wanted to thank everyone for watching today's podcast with Connor, and we appreciate him coming on the episode. You can find all our social medias at Phenom Motorsports, at Dirt Late Nation, and at CDN Racing Tours. We wanted to wish everyone a happy 410 day. It's obviously cool to have Connor, a 410 sprint car driver, on 410 day. This podcast will be up tomorrow for everyone to check it out. And yeah, thanks, Connor, for coming on.
Yeah, thanks
No
a lot,
problem,
Connor.
man. Yep, it
Yep.
was a pleasure.